But David, you told me to lower the airflow so that it helps remove moisture from the air. And now you're telling me that lower airflow is going to cause a problem.
So let's talk about context. Airflow has to be within certain limits. If it's too low, then you can end up with all kinds of problems, like the indoor coil freezing. You can have a lot of problems. If the airflow is too high, then it's actually blowing the air past the coil so fast that it doesn't have a chance to remove the moisture. So if you find that whenever the HVAC system comes on and it feels like it's blowing really hard and the air's just not that cold, there's a good possibility, although it's rare, that you may be moving too much air. That
Yeah,
happens.
absolutely. Especially in oversized systems on ductwork that's too small. It just blows out like a blowtorch, basically.
There's another one. Going back to the equipment, most HVAC equipment is oversized. And we've been using rules of thumb that only apply to houses built in 1973. We still use them today in houses built in the last 15 years. And it has caused equipment to be drastically oversized. So unless you live in a house that was built in 1973 and it has had no updates whatsoever, if someone comes in and they use some rule of thumb like 500 square feet per ton, your HVAC equipment is likely going to be oversized.
Yeah.
Another thing that you can look for is if you mentioned replacement earlier, Eric, if someone comes in and all they do is they read the data plate tag, there's usually a nameplate on every piece of HVAC equipment. If all they do is they get the equipment size or capacity off of that data plate and they say that's what your replacement equipment needs to be, chances are high you're still going to have an oversized piece of equipment. And just remember, newer equipment is a lot more precise in how it needs to be set up and installed than the older stuff. So your old one might not have had a problem. Your new one will.
Yeah. And so like I had a situation like this recently where two twin systems were replaced. The furnaces were replaced, but the air conditioners were not. And a problem developed after the new furnaces were installed because they were pushing out a lot more air. And the velocity of that air was just washing the walls and the ceilings of two places in particular in this house, to the point where it was freezing the plaster, and the temperature difference between the inside of the plaster and the outside of the plaster caused it to crack and fall apart. Again, the systems were too big for sure for this house, but then one simple change to a furnace created an air conditioning issue as well. So that goes back to the ECM motors now that are in furnaces, which are the variable speed electronically commutated motors versus the standard speed older ones. They push more air and they can cause this kind of stuff to happen.
Great point.